Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and a brand new Clan Wars campaign has just begun, and one of the possible options, or shall I say the brand new option for if you're successful in it, is to pick the Tier 10 Chinese reward tank, the 121B. I played around with this vehicle for a couple of hours so I can give you a preview on it to let you know if I think it's worth picking, and alternatively if you have no interest in Clan Wars and you don't stand a chance of picking one of these up, how to take them out effectively when they hit the battlefield in a few weeks. So before we get stuck into some gameplay, let's take a look at the statistics of the 121B to see how they stack up compared to the standard 121, the T62A, and also, this might surprise you, the Tier 9 French medium tank, the AMX-30 prototype. So the Tier 10 Chinese medium tank, the 121, is famous for its 122mm main armament with the highest alpha damage on any medium tank in the game. The 121B, however, forgoes this 122mm to use 105mm, which is very similar to the gun that's on the Centurion Action 10, as it gets APCR as standard, a lot like the Centurion Action 10, the M48 pattern, pretty much all of the other Tier 10 medium tanks apart from the 121, which has AP rounds on its standard ammunition. Next up, its heat rounds have 330mm of penetration, and the vehicle also gets HEP rounds, which is the equivalent of HESH rounds. They have 105mm of penetration, 480 damage, making them very efficient at taking out lightly armored tanks quickly. And when we compare those to the high explosive rounds on the standard 121, we can see that they've only got 68mm of penetration, even though their alpha damage is slightly higher, as you would expect with a higher caliber gun. And so that's something to consider when you're engaging a 121B, that if you're in a very lightly armored tank, he might try and inflate his DPM with the HEP rounds. However, he is certainly going to have to try and do everything that he can to inflate the DPM of this tank, because it is simply tragic. It's less than 2,300. That DPM really is absolutely awful. The standard 121 with 2,750 DPM has nearly 20% more DPM than the new 121B. And when we compare it to the T62A, the T62A has got nearly 27% DPM more than the new reward vehicle. And in fact, when we look at the AMX-30 prototype, which uses a very similar 105mm APCR main armament, it has more DPM at Tier 9 than the 121B has at Tier 10. And so that's certainly something to take advantage of if you're fighting a 121B, that you are most likely going to be able to shoot it twice if you fire at the same time before it manages to reload. So try and trade 2 for 1 with this tank. Just to put this into perspective, the standard 121 with its 122mm fires 6.25 rounds a minute with 440 alpha damage. The 121B, on the other hand, with its 105mm fires 5.88 rounds a minute with 390 alpha damage. So not only are you firing slower, but you've also got 50 less alpha damage in the 121B than in the standard 121. When we look at the shell velocity, of course, the APCR rounds are a massive upgrade over the standard 121's AP rounds. And also the vehicle carries quite a lot of ammunition, 50 rounds, which is the same as the T62A, but remember, that's 320 alpha damage and you've got 390 in the 121B. One of the best things about the 121B is it's got some really nice aim time, at least compared to the 121. It's half a second quicker to aim fully at the target. And also, it's just a touch more accurate at 0.33 instead of 0.35. However, when we compare this to the T62A, which has got 2 seconds aim time, is only a fraction less accurate and has way better dispersion values when moving the tank and also when turning the hull, the 121B, while it does have an upgraded aim time over the 121, will pale in comparison compared to many of the Soviet medium tanks, which I feel it also directly competes with. And we can see also that the 121B doesn't really have that much of an upgrade over the Tier 9 French medium tank, the AMX-30 prototype. The 121B has a key advantage over the standard 121 when it comes to gun depression. It's got 5 degrees, which isn't great, but it's on par at least with the T62A, and 2 degrees better than the standard Chinese Tier 10 medium tank. But of course, 5 degrees still isn't fantastic, and it's one of the reasons why some of the Soviet medium tanks do feel quite awkward over the ridge lines, and many of the vehicles have got 8, 9 or even 10 degrees of gun depression, like the SDB-1 and the Centurion Action 10 at Tier 10 T10 medium. Speed-wise, the 121B goes at 50 kilometers an hour, which is the same as the T62A, but 6 kilometers an hour slower than the top speed limit of the 121. Its power-to-weight ratio is also slightly worse than the 121B, and it has the same terrain resistances on hard, medium, but just a touch better on soft, which should make this vehicle almost exactly the same mobility as the 121, which, if we're honest, isn't the most mobile medium tank. Just look how the 121's mobility compares to the T62A. Not only is the power to weight ratio better on the Soviet medium tank, but also has improved ground resistances on hard and medium terrain, making the 121 and the 121B quite a lot slower than the Soviet medium tank. So what about the turret traverse? Well, it's slightly better than the 121 with the same tank traverse, but of course these pale compared to the T62A. So now on to one of the key features of the 121B, and that is the hull armor. Its hull armor is 130 millimeters on the upper plate. That is absolutely fantastic. This is, I believe, the thickest armor on any medium tank, apart from, I guess, the E50 and the E50M. And so this means that when you do angle the tank to the side like this, you are pretty much going to have about 250 millimeters of effective armor, and they're going to have to hit your lower plate if they want to penetrate you. But boy, what a weakness this lower plate is. Against a taller tank, the hull armor will dip down to about 230, 240, but that's still fantastic. And that's even when you're aiming up slightly at the enemy vehicle. Unfortunately, this is the only part that the 121B is thicker. It has the same side armor and the same rear armor as the 121, but the turret armor is the same apart from, in theory, the side of the tank, which is meant to have 160 millimeters, but it's not very well angled as we can see here, so you're not really going to be pulling off many ricochets from the side. So let's see how the vehicle would perform in a hull down situation. We can see that some parts of the cheeks here are at about 250, other parts of the turret are absolutely fantastic. The other side, again, 250, some areas 270. That means that it's a 50-50 really whether a tier 10 medium tank is going to go through you, and you're certainly not going to be bouncing rounds from tier 10 tank destroyers or anyone firing premium rounds at you. As soon as you don't depress the gun, it becomes an even worse story for the tank. There are many holes in the front of the vehicle. You've also got cupolas, and like the Soviet medium tanks, you have this weak point on top that is capable of being overmatched by 100mm guns and more. And so the 121B, while it certainly does have a very good turret, it just simply can't compare to the awesomeness that is the T62A turret. If this tank is hull down against you, you have such thin opportunities to be able to hit him on the cheeks. And all above here is like 300 to 50, up to 600 in some parts of this armor. It really is an incredible turret. And the weakness is so much less prominent, you have to be almost above the tank to be able to take advantage of it, because the weakest part of the top of the vehicle is 58 rather than the 30 that we see on the 121B. Everything else about the tank is identical, 1,950 hit points in all three of these vehicles and 400 meters view range. But I think that's quite enough theory crafting, let's get stuck into some gameplay. So here we go, playing the 121B on Arctic region. Let's get an idea of the mobility of the tank at the start of this game. We can see pulling away, not the fastest, but certainly not the slowest, I guess. We are going to be limited to that 50 kilometers an hour top speed limit, which is something to take into account. If I was in the 121 right now, I would probably be chugging along at 56 kilometers an hour, and I wouldn't have a Leopard prototype pushing me, because I'd probably be at least up about here by now, I'd say. So the 121B is a slight bit slower. Don't want to hardline that Leopard, but the T44 does on the other hand. So what I want to do right now is I want to press up. I want to try and take the northern part of the map. There's also no artillery, so I'm going to make quite an aggressive play to take the north of this map. This location up here in this A1, A2, B1, B2 area, if you can make it up there at the start of the game and there's no artillery on the enemy team, it is absolutely awesome. So we ricochet one shell from the Leopard as we advance, but now we're going to have to turn our side armor to him, and I'm just hoping he's not going to hit me. Oh gosh, not only does he hit me, he takes my track off and he rolls high for 440. We put one into him, I try and angle my armor again, but you see how he actually aimed at my lower plate there, I believe. Yep, right in on the lower plate, so good marksmanship there by the Leopard. That little movement of my armor towards him, I was hoping he was going to hit my upper plate and ricochet off, and damaging my fuel tanks, and I'm not using a fire extinguisher, is also something of a concern. So he fires one up into my viewports there. It doesn't actually manage to damage my tank, which is great. And now this is why I sacrificed those 800 hit points to be able to get here, because now I am above these guys. I'm going to be hull down with 130 millimeters of upper hull armor as well, if they do manage to see my upper hull at least. and hopefully I'll only expose my turret, and now we can absolutely rip them apart. And this is where this tank will do better than the 1-2-1, because not only do you have that better aim time at 2.2 seconds rather than 2.7 seconds, I believe, not only do you have those APCR rounds which fly true towards the target, which means that you don't have to give lead, but you've got the 5 degrees of gun depression, so a lot of these shots would not be possible if I didn't have the 5 degrees of gun depression on this tank. So, fair enough, we're doing alright here, but would I have done better so far in the 1-2-1? That's really what I'm going to be trying to ask myself. So I make an aggressive play here and I bounce off the T-54 first prototype, which I'm a little bit concerned of. I rammed the T-54E1 because I was hoping I could push him down into the dip, and oh no, everything is going wrong now. I think I was a little overconfident here. I'm ammo-racked now, so I have one of the worst reloads ever, but luckily my armor is holding up as I ricochet 3 shells in a row on 255 hit points. Don't quite manage to reload. Hopefully I'll be able to put one into the T-54E1. Yes, I do. Come on! Okay. Yeah. Well, at least I ended up finally getting him down there, right, guys? I'm sure he's just drowning himself on purpose, though. So, the 1-2-1B's resilient armor coming into play there. You can play like an absolute donkey at times in this tank while I was playing it over the 2 hours, and it does feel immensely forgiving. Luckily, the 4202 not rolling high there. We're up to 3,700 damage in the first 3 minutes of the game. 1 kill, certainly not the best. I did lose my ammo rack a hell of a lot in this tank, guys, so I certainly recommend that you want to be taking safe stowage on this vehicle as quickly as you possibly can. And there's even an argument, I feel like I was getting ammo racked pretty much as a leopard in this tank. And so you want to watch out for that as well. Maybe there's an argument to use 2 repair kits even. But I digress, back onto the action. So the 1-2-1B there, able to cut through that flank. We handled some decent players on the enemy team, some not quite so much, but we did what we needed to do. And this is where that 5 degrees really comes in handy. Oh, there's a sneaky RU-251 in the corner. I really felt that when I was playing this tank that you can go hull down in a lot more locations, and you do feel a lot more flexible than the standard 1-2-1 is. I mean, the difference between 3 degrees of gun depression and 5 degrees of gun depression is absolutely massive. But all in all, we've also seen that... Oh, I managed to hit him on the move there. All in all, we've also seen that you've got to watch out for the lower plate on this tank, because as soon as your opponents do have it, that you're going to be taken out quickly. Now I'm loading a HEP round here. This is the only time in this video that I will be loading one of the HEP rounds, although I did make use of them throughout the evening. Let's see how much we're going to do. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We've got 480 average damage. Oh, we only roll for 420. That's a bit disappointing there, guys. But still, those 105mm HEP rounds are very useful for taking on tanks like that. And I guess I could have made better use of them against the Leopard, possibly, earlier as well. But when you've got a very long reload, like you do in this tank, especially when you're ammo racked now, you really want to think carefully about what ammunition you're going to use, and only use the HEP rounds if you're ultra sure. So this game is pretty much over, and I feel like being a little bit greedy. The 5 degrees, not quite enough to get the 430 here. He's aiming up at me. Don't want to give him my tank. Oh well, screw it. Let's go. Let's see if we can get him. Oh, disaster. We bounce off his tank. He puts one into us, finishes us off. We don't pick up the second kill. We'll go over 5,000 damage. Oh well. Doesn't really matter in a way. My team go on and finish off the enemies. And yeah, this was actually a pretty good result considering it was a 5-minute game for us. We did 5,000 damage while ammo racked. Not too bad for the 1-2-1B. But let's get stuck into some more gameplay. So here we go again. This time we're playing on Windstorm, 2 winter maps in a row, hey? Okay, let's take a quick look at the model of the tank as well. Just give you guys a closer look at the 1-2-1B. It is certainly in high definition, as we can see by the rifling on the barrel. I think it's a fairly pretty looking tank. Got a machine gun on top. Look how they even model those shells, or the rounds of the machine gun. Yeah, I like the searchlight on front of the tank as well. It is a cool looking tank in my opinion. But I don't know what you guys think. It is quite similar to the 1-2-1, I guess. But just embellished, right? And so if you are looking to pick one of these up, I do think that you're going to feel a little bit special on the battlefield. So we're going to race up into another hull down position. I always look for positions where I'm going to be able to use 5 degrees of gun depression where I play a tank like this or play a tank like the T62A. And this is one of the big differences between the 1-2-1B and the standard 1-2-1. I'm pretty sure if I'd been in the standard 1-2-1 there, that I would have been unable to snap that shot in. Oh, listen to the sizzle. Unfortunately, I thought my turret would be able to hold up, but remember when I was highlighting the weak points of the turret on the cheeks? Looks like that 330 millimeters of heat penetration managed to go straight through us. So we actually missed the IS-7 there, but we hit the AMX 1390 behind him. That poor guy. We put in another one. Maybe the accuracy a little bit better here, right guys? That aim time allowing us to snap in some shots. The APCR rounds flying towards the fast-moving tanks. I'm pretty sure that the gun handling on this tank here has done better than I would have done in the 1-2-1. However, we've also got to think that if I was in the 1-2-1, I would not probably have enough time to do a bit of a jig between my shells, to be honest, as I am managing to do here. Like, I could probably, what can I do? I can go and get my phone out, send a text message. Okay, I get to play again. Now, honestly, I'm obviously joking a little bit. But I did feel a little bit frustrated in this tank that you don't have the continuous, immersive fire gameplay that I would have if I was playing something like a T62A, or even if I was playing in an SDB1. The difference between firing 7.5 rounds a minute like you do on the SDB1 and firing the 5.88 rounds a minute as you do on this tank, it is significant. A good shot there onto the AMX 1390, and I don't know, it's so hard to really be objective as to whether I would be doing better if I was playing in a 1-2-1 or if I was playing in a 1-2-1B here. Certainly, if I got lucky in the 1-2-1 and my shells flew true, even though it's got worse accuracy, longer aim time, and so on and so forth, and the AP rounds with the lower shell velocity giving my opponents a chance to be able to evade them at long range, then the 1-2-1 is going to do more, because it just has that 20% extra raw DPM, right? But for consistency, the low aim time, the decent accuracy, I think the 1-2-1B in these kind of situations is probably going to outperform the 1-2-1. However, unfortunately for my team, things starting to get a little bit grave here. We have only managed to kill 4 of the enemy team, and they have managed to kill, gosh, is it 9 of us? Oh yeah, just at the top of the screen. So we are seriously outnumbered here, outnumbered by 5 tanks. I'm going to go and try and assist this Jagdtiger. I thought that the STB-1 and the T-54 might be able to handle themselves, and I see this T-49 making his way in. I don't really have time to load HEP, so I'm just going to give him a ram as well as a shot. Unfortunately, he fires a shell into me as well. I take 341 damage from the Tier 8 light tank. Kind of didn't want to take that damage, but I felt like I needed to take care of him and then hopefully go across to help out these medium tanks. And now this is where, up until this point, I think that the 1-2-1B would have been the better tank. But there is no doubt now. Oh god. Wow. Okay. Hold on. Am I meant to shoot at his lower plate now? Or his upper plate? Has his lower plate become the upper plate? I don't know. All I care about is I get the kill. But this is where I think the 1-2-1B is by far the worst tank. Because you've got a worse rate of fire, you've got worse alpha damage. In these kind of situations, the only way that you're going to survive is if you kill everything that's in front of you. And that's quite often what your high-tier medium tanks can do. They can just rip apart the enemy team. Oh, can you believe, I think I was loading a heat round there to try and shoot at the T-57 Heavy, and I hit the gun of the Batchat with the heat round there. How little damage have I done to these guys in such a long time? I really feel that if I'd been playing in the standard 1-2-1 instead of the 1-2-1B, that I would have been able to pick apart my opponents way faster, possibly dealt with them, and then been able to turn around and deal with the Batchatillon. When it comes down to these all-in kind of firefights, I certainly don't think you want to be in the 1-2-1B, but however, when we were in the position up here, I think the 1-2-1B would be superior when we were sniping in shots, having to react to pull off clutch shots at light tanks dashing around. The 1-2-1B is probably going to be superior to the 1-2-1. So in our first round on Arctic region, we get a high caliber medal for the 5,000 damage that we dealt here. We also managed to ricochet 2,000 with our armor. And in the second round, we managed to pull off 4,597 damage, pretty much double what anyone else was able to achieve. But the armor not quite working out so well when that T-57 Heavy compensated for our thick armor by using those heat rounds against us. And so all in all, while the 1-2-1B really isn't terrible, I just feel like it doesn't have the grunt in the DPM like pretty much all of the other medium tanks to be able to cut its way through an engagement. In fact, you know what one of the easiest ways is to see whether the 121B is competitive is just to compare it directly to the T62A. Just very quickly, as we mentioned, like 27% more DPM, same penetration. Fair enough, you have lower alpha damage, but that rate of fire more than makes up for it. The T62A has got better aim time, just a touch worse accuracy, way better dispersion values, the same depression, the same top speed limit, but way better power to weight ratio with better ground resistances, which will make it vastly more mobile. It also has better turret traverse, better tank traverse. It has way better turret armor as we described. And the T62A even has less chance to be set on fire than the 121B. And so literally, the only thing that the 121B does better than the T62A is the tiniest amount of accuracy and that extra 30mm of frontal hull armor, only on the upper plate. Because in fact, while the 121B has 80mm of lower plate armor, the T62A actually has 100mm of lower plate armor, making it better when people aim at your, in theory, weak lower plate. And so in this comparison, this really makes the 121B look like a bit of a trash tank in my opinion. And it's only when we really compare the 121B directly to the 121 that we think it has even an inkling of an opportunity. But in theory, if here we have the T62A and here we have the 121, the 121B kind of sits in the middle. But actually it doesn't, because it sits so far below the T62A with regards to overall performance that it's kind of redundant and completely pointless. And so if you do have a choice in this campaign, I thoroughly recommend that you pick something else unless you are a Chinese medium tank fanatic or you just want to have the latest toy to have a bit of fun in because you've got all the other vehicles. And to the 95% of you who are watching this video who will never get to play this tank, just remember my tips taking it out. Number 1, shoot it in the lower plate. Number 2, if you can hit the cupolas, give it a go. If you can't find the cupolas, then try to fire premium rounds to the left and to the right of the turret. And number 3, this tank has got horrific DPM, absolutely horrific DPM. And pretty much every tier 9 medium tank will be able to outtrade this vehicle with regards to rate of fire, let alone tier 10 tanks. So hopefully this video was useful, or maybe you just enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving it a like, it really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments what you think about the 121B. Do you think that it looks like a really strong tank, or do you think it looks like a really weak tank? Are you going to pick one in the upcoming campaign? And if so, why? And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.